But then there's this process called second force. Now this process is when we take a step on our behalf moving forward, the universe is going to test our conviction of that. The great rabbi teachers, basically when someone comes to study with these rabbis, they reject them. They humiliate them. They ridicule them like, how dare you come into my study and think that you're going to be one of my students? And they do this 3 times because they are testing the conviction of these students. Are these students serious about being called to study rabbinically, or they just have a whim or a lark? If you've been watching the Olympics, you know exactly what this second force looks like, because there's time and time and time again where these people have had just dramatic setbacks, right? And persevere through them. I didn't get to see this last night, but I saw in the news this morning that this one Canadian ice skater was part of a team that was competing for the gold, the chance to go into the gold medal, and her skate broke as she's coming around the corner, and she falls flat on her face and just crushes herself into the ice, all right? And she's sliding along, and she realizes the finish line is right there, and she swings her foot out. And she beat the American girl by 3/100ths of a second. That is what second force and enlightened living looks like. The world throws things up in your face, and you deal with them, and you handle them, and you move on. And so when Robin was told that the school that she wanted to go to in Salt Lake City wouldn't transfer anywhere, instead of saying, oh, that's the end of it, I'm going to quit on myself, I'm going to sell out my dream one more time, she came up with a new vision that was even better. And she moved to Lebanon, and now she's in a school that gives her total transferability all around the country. You see, we take the difficulty and we transform it into a blessing. That is the key of co-creative empowered living. It's not that we don't have difficulties. It's not that we don't have setbacks. It's that when we do, rather than quit on ourselves and become victims, we find a way to persevere through. Now, there's ways to do that, but the key way to do it is through prayer and conscious contact with people who are on a spiritual path. They will hold the vision for you when you cannot hold it for yourself. They will be able to see possibilities that you will not be able to see yourself. I had a turning point moment in my life. I had been asked to interview for a job as a temporary minister in Bandon, Oregon. And I was willing to interview with them, and I thought that they would pay the airfare up to interview. And they said, no, you have to pay your own airfare to interview for us. And this job was paying $1,300 a month. So I had some issues about them expecting me to pay my own up there. And so I was going to turn them down. And I called a man who has known me many years. He said, John, here's what you can do. Instead of paying your own money to fly up there, why don't you drive up to visit Debbie and spend the night with Debbie, and then drive from there the next day up to Bandon. And he had a vision of how I could do this that I could not have thought of myself. We co-create. We invite divine presence into our lives through co-creation, which means input and openness and receptivity and open-heartedness and open-mindedness to ideas that are not our ideas. We don't think we have to know it all. We just have to be open to Spirit working through other people to manifest our good on our behalf. And so this idea of co-creativity requires us to begin to understand that the universe is benevolent, that the universe is kind to us, that the universe is empowering of us. Now, the main tool that people talk about in terms of prosperity consciousness and empowered living is visualization. We get an idea of what would be good for us, and we visualize how to do it, right? We choose what it is that we want to manifest, and then we take a step in that direction. That's the process called visualization. The third level of consciousness around prosperity is surrendered living. Now, none of us know anything about that. Certainly, this has been the hard lesson for me. It's easy for me to use spiritual tools to get what I want. It's been very challenging for me to use spiritual tools to let go of that which I think I want. And to surrender into this idea that Spirit is working through me for the betterment of the planet and that my purpose is here to serve. I always thought that the spiritual path was I would get more. But the fact is that the longer you're on the spiritual path, the more you realize you have to give. And if you're attached to getting and you're being called to give, you're going to be straddling the second and third stage of prosperity consciousness. You're going to want to visualize having what you want, and you're going to be called to serve in ways that you don't want. And until we move fully into that and we get that, it's a challenge. And it can take a number of years and a number of cycles and a number of setbacks and a number of second fours before we realize, God, I'm only here to serve. I'm here because I want to serve. Now, good parenting can help model that for us. So the first time I met Paul Bezanson, the very first day I came to interview here, he was trying to learn how to play the keyboard. And he wasn't very skilled at it. But he was 100% committed to playing the keyboard because he was empowering his daughter, who was maybe 17, maybe 16, I don't know, very, very young girl, to sing as the music director here at Unity of Corvallis. And he was accompanying her because she needed his support in order to manifest her dream. He wasn't getting paid for this. He was doing it because he was serving and loving and being the man who he's called to be. There's nothing in it for him except to give and support and empower others. This is a very challenging way to live. As a parent, there's some of us that kind of get that that's what a father or mother's job is to do. But in terms of the big picture, this is very evolved living. The tool that people use to access this is visioning. Because what we're doing is not visualizing how we can get what we want. We're letting go and releasing what we want and finding out how can we serve life. What is our authentic action to serve others, to empower others, to equip others? It's a totally different way of looking at the universe, and it requires us to know that there is enough. So it confronts the whole scarcity principle at a very, very core level. When you're living from this place, your 10% tithe comes off the top first. It's not a struggle to tithe. It is a blessing to tithe. It is like, I cannot wait to give back to those people who have empowered and equipped me. I want enlightenment, and I know that the only way I can create enlightenment is to give enlightenment. And I'm not going to look at my bank account and say, this is going to dictate how I behave, because that's victim thinking, right? That's reacting to what's happening in circumstances or in the world. Instead, it's working from principle. I believe in this, and therefore I am going to first give and then find out where it comes from there. This is not an easy place to stay. And we want to shift right out of it as quickly as possible most of the time. I mean, I certainly do not find myself living here on a consistent basis, as you all know. Right? But there is this possibility of a meaningful and fulfilling life only through service. You're never going to be fulfilled as you go out there and try and get more. We all know that. It is through giving that we receive. That's what St. Francis taught us.